Hello and welcome to the metacognition video. So today we're going to focus on understanding metacognition. Have you experienced any of the following? So you don't know how to make your own notes when a teacher or an activity asks you to. You don't know how to study effectively. And I'm sorry, but this is not reading over your notes. Struggling when you don't understand something. Struggle to plan and complete assignments on time. Assignments that are missing pieces, so you're disappointed after you've handed it in because you are missing big or small chunks. School seems meaningless, or you're not really making any connections to what you're learning. Having difficulty focusing on school, and having difficulty getting started or sticking to a task until it's finished. If this is you, then you need metacognition. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing in this video. So, learning goals and success criteria. We're looking to have a beginning understanding of metacognition and how it can be used to improve your understanding of concepts and/or processes. You want to be able to understand, identify properties of, and be able to use some learning strategies. And you want to be able to use the components of metacognition, so connecting, planning, monitoring, and evaluating, to deepen your understanding of how you learn best. How we're going to do this, and how we're going to achieve these learning goals, is being able to summarize what metacognition means and describe how it can be used to improve your understanding of concepts and processes. You'll be able to identify, describe, and apply a variety of learning strategies. And you'll be able to use the refresh activity to practice using learning strategies and other components of metacognition. So again, the connecting, planning, monitoring, and evaluating. So a little backstory about me. When I was in high school, I had terrible, and I mean terrible, work skills. I had no clue how to take notes. I honestly thought studying was looking over my notes or looking over the textbook. I didn't know how to plan and complete projects. It was always just kind of up in the air for me, and then I would just try to do something. I was consistently disappointed in a final mark, often because I had missing pieces. So I'd get back a rubric and I'd have an R in a section because I had forgotten to include, maybe my bibliography or something like that. I am a huge procrastinator. So procrastinating while completing projects and assignments, I always had to rush at that last minute, and, there were just things missing, or it just wasn't my best. And there were definitely some other things that made me dislike school, but my inability to do these things effectively was probably at this start. So, unfortunately for me, it wasn't until my second year of university that I realized what was wrong. I had no idea how to learn. I had no clue whatever. I had gone through 14 years of schooling, so kindergarten through to grade 13, because they had that when I went to high school. Plus, I had 2 years of university. So I had no clue for what worked for me. I spent the remainder of the school year trying different strategies to see what worked. I asked all of my peers, I borrowed notes, I watched what people were doing, I asked them how they studied, I asked them to study with them, I followed study groups, I searched the internet, I asked my teachers for help, for strategies, and I even asked my friends, so people who I knew who had been successful, or even people who I knew who studied really hard. I went to them and I asked, "What are you doing? Because I can't seem to figure it out." So the moral of all of that is I tried what I felt like everything until finally a few things clicked for me and I felt really good about what I was doing. So the number one thing is that I learned how to take notes so that I understood. I had this really crazy system in this really awesome World War II class where I went to school class, every day with 4 colored pencils. And I had one color for what the teacher was saying. I had one color for what he had written on his overhead. I had one color for diagrams, and I had a separate color for my connections that I was making to the readings that he had us do previously. So it was a lot of work, but it was something that I found successful. I also learned how to study in a way that worked for me. And again, I cannot reiterate this enough. Reading over your notes or the textbook, or glancing over things, or even reading them over and over and over again until you can memorize it, is not an effective strategy for pretty much everyone. There are a few that it works for, but I'm telling you, you're probably not one of them. I also learned how to organize and plan my assignments to ensure I had all the necessary components. So this is where I started using checklists and lists. So I would go back and make sure that I had everything. I would either check it off, or I would make a list beforehand and cross it off as I got them done, so I knew that I had everything I needed. I also started to learn how to plan my time and get started on assignments early so that I wasn't rushing to meet deadlines. Let's just say this is an ongoing learning strategy. No one's ever perfect at this, except for, maybe my mom. She's awesome at this area. So I just strive to do better every time. Kind of the whole point of this is that I don't want you to have to struggle like me. I don't want you to get to university or post-secondary or even just out in the workplace and have no clue how to learn anything. So I'm going to help you with metacognition. So what does metacognition actually mean? Essentially, it just means thinking about your thinking. And when I went to a workshop on this, I couldn't believe that we were going to spend an entire weekend talking about this. So thinking about your thinking. There is so much in here, but I am going to just kind of pare it down for you. Why study metacognition? The honestly simple answer is that you need to understand how your brain works so that you can reach your full potential. And I really want to highlight the fact that it is your brain. So I'm going to provide an overview of many different strategies and many different things that are out there. And the goal of this is that you're going to try some of them, and you might like some of them, and you might hate some of them. And the goal is to practice the ones you like and to dump the ones that you don't. So again, the whole focus is on your brain. So being able to understand what works for you can help save your time, deepen your understanding, increase your resilience and perseverance, increase your interest in your learning, and help against unnecessary frustration and anxiety. There are many components to metacognition, but we're just going to break it down into 2 sections, monitoring and adapting. So monitoring is that as you are learning, you are aware of your progress and the strategies that you're using. So you're consciously thinking about, what am I doing and is it working? Okay. And the next part is adapting. So that's that part of, if it isn't working, make some changes. So try a different strategy, look in a different place, ask a different person. And it may seem really simple, these 2 things, and we know them, but we're not consciously aware of them. And these 2 things have to happen together. We have to know what we're doing, and we have to know if it's working. And even just going through this metacognition makes you aware that these things are happening. And then if you're aware, you might be a little bit more inclined to assess what's working and make changes as needed. So basic metacognitive aids and strategies. This can be broken down into 3 sections: connecting new information to existing knowledge, selecting thinking strategies deliberately, and plan, monitor, and evaluate your thinking processes. So I'm going to break that down further in the next slides. So for number one, connecting new information to existing knowledge. There is a ton of brain science out there. I mean, a ton of brain science. And I've worked with some neuroscientists in the past. I've gone to many workshops. I've done courses, and they've really started to understand the brain a bit better. It's still a huge mystery and such a powerful, powerful muscle that we have. But one of the things is that when you are trying to learn something new, if you can make that connection to something that you already know, your brain just lights up so much more. You are actually learning more about the new subject if you can make that connection. So some of the ways we can go about doing that is completing getting to know you activities, actively comparing new concepts to previous concepts or experiences, providing a choice of tasks, providing even open tasks, and doing things like scaffolding. I'll talk a little bit more about that right here. So some of these things are for you to do. So getting to know you activities. It's really hard in online courses to kind of make those connections and really get to know students and your peers and your teacher. So it's really important that we do those activities because they will help me, one of my activities that I need to do here, plan some ways that's going to be easier for you to make connections. The other thing for you to do is to actively compare new concepts to previous concepts and think deeply about your understanding. So as we're going through something, you need to be active rather than passive. As you're reading something, as you're trying some of the course content, it's really an important part that you are there. So you're trying to find ways to build on what you already know. And then some things for me is once you have those getting to know you activities, I'm able to make some plans or some changes to the content so that you can make those connections. If you're struggling and you reach out to me, I'm able to know a little bit more about you so I can help you make those connections. Providing a choice of tasks also allows you to go with your strengths and interests. So again, I've tried to do this throughout the course. It won't always be available, but we can always do our best. Providing open tasks is also a really great one. Also lots of brain science around this one that particularly in math, we tend to rely on here's a question, find the answer, whereas an open task allows you to demonstrate your understanding and it's not so closed off. And then also structuring your learning so that your previous skills are highlighted and built on. So that's that scaffolding. So again, we really want to build from your foundation. So connecting to things that you already know. And we're going to do a little refresh activity to kind of bring what we already know to the surface. We are also going to be focusing on this in just the basic structure of the course. So we're not going to be going through the course unit by unit by unit by unit, one after the other. We're actually going to do spiraling. So we're going to learn maybe part one of a task in every one of the units, and then we're going to come back and learn part two. So that gives our brain time to process so that when we are ready to build in the part two, we have that solid foundation. So the second part of metacognition is selecting thinking strategies deliberately. There are so many different strategies, but I just want you to take a moment and think of what are some of the things you do when you are learning something new? Or even what are some of the things that you do when you are stuck? Because oftentimes when we are stuck is the point where we throw up our hands, we get frustrated, we get anxious about not understanding, and then we just full stop. So what are some of the things that you do? If we go back and look at my examples, I can actually highlight